the keys are to the glory days at the stick. From who's got it better than us to brick by brick. It's always the 49ers way, from off-season to game day. Yeah, we talk back. It's the 49ers Cutback.
It's 49ers Cutback Podcast time. Welcome to the show, everyone. It's going to be a fun one. I want to talk a little bit about playoffs. Of course, it's Thursday, so it's live Q&A. So if you have questions regarding the San Francisco 49ers, leave it in chat, and we'll get into it. It's going to be a good one. And what's up to Paul, and what's up to Jan? How's it going? Jan said, already coming through with the questions, did not waste any time. It says, run the season or rest the players. I think the 49ers are going to go in there and try to win this football game. I don't know exactly what's going to happen with the Philadelphia Eagles-Giants game. It looks like the Giants are probably going to hold back their starters, making it a little bit more difficult for the 49ers to be able to get the number one seed. But with Minnesota playing early in the day, you're going to have a pretty good idea of how the 49ers sit as far as the 2 seed. I expect the Minnesota Vikings to be able to win their game at 10 a.m. I mean, nothing is for sure, but it's Kirk Cousins and not in prime time, and a Bears team that's going to be without Justin Fields. I would expect Minnesota to win, and then for the 49ers to have to win against Arizona to be able to hold on to the 2 seed, which I know they at least want to do that. That way they make sure that in the divisional round, they would have home field advantage against whoever came their way. So I think that is potentially how things are going to play out. But I think in the back of their minds, too, they're going to be watching Philly and just seeing what happens. We'll see if Jalen Hurts is going to play or not. I think that'll play a big determining role in how the 49ers play with their starters and backups. And, of course, they're going to make sure they keep everyone healthy, but they got some guys to get reacclimated, like Elijah Mitchell, potentially Deebo Samuel. We'll see. What's up, SL? How's it going? And what's up, Ziggy? Welcome to chat. Glad you are here. So let's go through some of these playoff scenarios. And like I said, you guys can bring up any questions along the way, and we'll get into those. Also, what exactly is the 49ers path, to get to the number one seed? Because number one seed, of course, has got to be the number one goal, because then you get a bye week. You get that week off. You get home field advantage through the entire playoffs. I think that's important for the 49ers to do. I think that's what they're going to try to do here. And how do they do that? Well, it's this simple. You need to beat Arizona, and you need Philadelphia to lose to New York. If that happens, you win and the Eagles lose, you are the number one seed in the playoffs. And I think that is important. So I think that's how they're going to do it. That's how they're going to get there. Will they? I don't know. That's a bigger question. And as far as who they would play after that, it all depends on who wins. What those matchups are. If the 49ers are the 1 seed, the Eagles could be 2 or the Eagles could be 5. The Cowboys could be 2 or the Cowboys could be 5. And in those scenarios, they could easily play the Packers, Lions, or Seahawks, and you might get an upset. So it switches in the NFL. It's not exactly dead set seeding, but it reseeds as you go to each round. So remember that. And what's up, JLE? JLE's in chat. And JLE says, keep it running. Don't think Giants and sorry, I'm having a hard time seeing this for whatever reason. Says keep it running. I'm gonna move this thing over real quick. 1 second, JLE. Apologies. Says keep it running. Don't think Giants second stringers can beat the Eagles. Oh well, second seed. Yeah, there you go. And that's it, right? If you get the second seed, you get the second seed. And I would like to say to JLE, thanks again for being a member for 15 months. And JLE uses his membership advantages to be able to leave a free super chat. So if you're a member, you can leave free super chats just like that. And if you're not a member, join, and then you can do the same thing right there that JLE just did. And then, Paul says, hey, Ant, what is the 49ers defensive lapses last week? More execution or scheme? I seen a lot of execution problems. I seen, a couple of things. I do want to give Josh McDaniels a little bit of credit for the way he knew that DeMeco Ryans was going to be extremely aggressive against Jarrett Stidham and try to get him back on his heels early. So I think that that's important. So maybe I think that, that plays into it. But also, I mean, we had Hufanga, mess up in coverage a little bit. He got beat. We had some other lapses. I seen Diamond Nor come up to the line of scrimmage and then have to try to recover to take on Waller. That was it. And then it was ball skills as well. So I think there's lack of execution. I do think a little bit of scheme early on as Josh McDaniels took advantage of the eagerness of the defense and D'Amico Ryans to get after Jarrett Stidham and kind of establish, their will and take away what the Raiders wanted to do for sure. So I think there. And Jan's already giving a score 19-17 Niners. Interesting. That's low. Matt Burgos says, got to beat Pack. Need Mayfield to bake. Yeah, Matt is a Lions fan, so they need to go ahead and beat the Packers. And Baker Mayfield has to beat the Seattle Seahawks. That's one of the things that we're going into. And Paul's making fun of me being able to see. Yeah, what happens is I have a couple of monitors, and there's one down here on the bottom. And for whatever reason, when it's in green, like they come through on my chat, thanks to YouTube, the membership ones, they always are hard to read. So yeah, maybe it's glasses time for me, right, Paul? I'm aging so fast. Mr. Corey says that's okay. At 3-4, who would have thought we get the number 2 seed? Yeah, I'm not complaining about the number 2 seed, to be honest. The number 2 seed is a pretty good situation for the 49ers to be in. And, how exactly do the 49ers stay at the number 2? Well, it's really simple. If they win against the Arizona Cardinals, they're the number 2 seed. If the Minnesota Vikings lose, they are the number 2 seed. So a Vikings loss or a 49ers win means the 49ers are the number 2 seed. And then who they play is where it gets kind of interesting. And I think those are probably the ones that we want to go over the most because it's the most likely. Even though we'd love to get the number 1 seed, getting the number 2 seed is probably the most likely for the 49ers. And there's 3 possible football teams they can play: the Green Bay Packers, the Seattle Seahawks, and the Detroit Lions. The reason you name them in that order, the Green Bay Packers control their own fate. If the Green Bay Packers beat the Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football, they will be the number 7 seed. They hold the tiebreakers. Now, if Seattle wins against the Los Angeles Rams and the Detroit Lions beat the Green Bay Packers, then Seattle gets into the playoffs. If for Detroit to get in, they must beat Green Bay and the Rams must beat Seattle. So those are the ways those 3 teams get into that number 7 seed. So Green Bay is probably the most likely because all they have to do is win. For the Seahawks, they only have to have Detroit beat Green Bay. So it should be interesting matchups. That Sunday Night Football game is going to be extremely pivotal to the playoffs. I'm looking forward to watching it. By then we'll know if the 49ers are the number 2 seed or the number 1 seed and whether that game, makes a lot of sense for the 49ers, whether it's impactful to them or not. Donald says, what is the last on Deebo? Deebo's been practicing. He's been, getting out there. He's been turning it up at practice a little bit more here and there. But, his words yesterday about, if he's not 100%, he's not going to push himself to go out there. I fully expect that if Kyle Shanahan wants Deebo out there, that Deebo will go out there. But I think it will be an extremely limited role. If he plays, I don't think he'll play more than like 15 snaps, maybe get a handful of touches because I do think they want to keep him healthy, but they want to get him reacclimated to this offense. I think they'd love for him to play with Brock Purdy a little bit. So maybe that's what we'll get from Deebo. But if he doesn't play, it would be interesting because if you got the number 1 seed, for instance, Deebo wouldn't play, for another week. And, what would he look like in the divisional round? Would he be full go and ready to go? And Jan says 2 seed may face the Seahawks. If Green Bay loses, then you can see the Seahawks. Mr. Course says Green Bay is the most likely. I think so too. I think that one kind of makes the most sense right now, just due to the fact that, all they have to do is win. So I think they're the most likely, followed by the Seahawks, then the Lions. And it's only because the Lions need a couple things to happen. They need to win and they need the Seahawks to lose, which makes it a little bit more difficult. Donald says, who thinks Eagles will lose again? Not with what the Giants are potentially going to sit everyone. If the Giants hold most of their starters out, I don't think they could beat, an Eagles team who's motivated to get the number 1 seed. If it's Gardner Minshew, maybe there's an opportunity there. But if Jalen Hurts is playing, the Eagles are 14-point favorites right now. I think a lot of people expect the Eagles to be able to win. I think if it was Giants versus Eagles full go, maybe you would have an opportunity. We'll see. You never know. It's the NFL. You never know. Mr. Corey said, I'd rather play Seattle out of the three. I agree. I think it goes Seattle, then Detroit, then the Packers, because the Packers have been playing at such a high level right now. Their defense has been playing good. But, all three of those teams would be tough. None of those teams are a pushover for sure. You're going to have to go in there and execute. And that's why one of the good things is playing at Levi Stadium. You're not playing in Lambeau like you were last year in the snow. So a little bit different circumstances for the 49ers. Jan says Eagles weren't as stacked as quarterback as it shows. Miami too. Once they lost their quarterback, you can see their teams, suffer a little bit. 49ers have been able to withstand quarterback injuries, which is unbelievable. And the fact that they had three quarterbacks at this caliber on their roster at once is fantastic. JLE says, who do you think will give us the most problems in the first round, Ant? Not really worried about any of them, but it's one game at a time. I think when I always look at it, I want to know whose defense is playing the best. And I think right now Green Bay's defense is playing the best. What's up, Phil? How's it going? Welcome to chat. What's up, Traffic? How's it going? I think you look at the teams and you look at the Packers and their defense is playing so good right now. I mean, what Jair Alexander, and that secondary did to Justin Jefferson was pretty impressive. And we know the Vikings can sometimes disappear, but I thought that was something to remember. Plus, they are the only one of those three teams that have a franchise elite quarterback in Aaron Rodgers. And yeah, he didn't look good early in the year, but as Christian Watson's come on and Romeo Doubs has come on, they've definitely looked like a better team. Now, I think with the things that they do with Watson, I'm not as worried about him against the 49ers. I think that, it's not Devontae Adams, so I think the 49ers match up well. But I think right now they're just one of those hot teams that you'd rather not play if you don't have to. But, Detroit's got a bad secondary, but a good front. The Seattle Seahawks and 49ers have matched up well against the two times. So I think that the Packers would probably be the toughest battle of the three. Paul says, have you heard about a possible plan to handle the Bills-Bengal game? Is to add an 18 and eliminate the first team bye, or add an 8th team and eliminate the first team bye. I have not heard that. That would be remarkable. I've heard the NFL was willing to go to this with no byes and 8 teams playing because it maximizes monetarily. But I'm sure there's a lot of things on the table. I don't know what the NFL is going to do. I'm sure that's going to play out over the next 72 hours. It's going to be a little bit interesting, but that would be interesting. That would change the playoff format for sure. And if there's no bye week, someone should go out there and tell these teams that are about to gut it out and try to win that number 1 seed for the reason that they're going to get a bye. Traffic says, what up, TCC? Packers might lose on purpose just to avoid us in the playoffs again. Wouldn't that be interesting? We'll just bypass the entire playoffs. We don't want the 49ers and those problems. That's pretty funny. Mr. Court says Green Bay's defense plus Aaron Rodgers plus Christian Watson. No thanks. Bring on Seattle. Yeah, especially since it's going to be at Levi Stadium. You just why tackle the beast that is Aaron Rodgers? And just the things that they can do. Now, I'm not like overly concerned about Romeo Doubs or Alan Lazard. I would think that their running game is pretty good, so you're gonna have to make sure you get in there and stop the run, which can make it more difficult when you have a blazer like Christian Watson. But the 49ers have been equipped to handle speed receivers this year, and speed receivers haven't killed them a whole bunch. I think the mismatch that I don't like is Christian Watson one-on-one with Deommodore Lenoir, not because of speed reasons, but because of size. And that seems to be something that has kind of, bothered him a little bit. So potentially, JLE's not worried about the Packers. The 0-4 Aaron Rodgers versus the 49ers is not scaring a whole lot of people. So how do the 49ers end up in the 3 seed? Well, for some, it would be, some people have told me this is the best situation for the 49ers to end up in the 3 seed. So that way they can play the New York Football Giants, because the Giants are locked into the 6. So if you are the 3 seed, you are playing Saquon Barkley, Daniel Jones, and the New York Giants. And how do the 49ers get there? They have to lose the game against Arizona. Minnesota has to win against Chicago, and then they will fall to the number 3 seed. And in that case, they would play the Giants. potentially, who knows what would happen after that. If Minnesota is upset, then the 49ers at 3 could play, the winner of the Tampa Bay Dallas game. If Minnesota lost, that would mean they would play the winner of the Tampa Bay Dallas game or Eagles, depending on if the Eagles lost or not. So those are some interesting situations. The 49ers can only end up first, second, or third seed. That is it. The Buccaneers are locked into 4. And when it comes to the Cowboys and Eagles, the Eagles win, they're the number 1 seed. If they lose, they could be 2 or 5. If the Cowboys win, they could be 2 or 5. So it's one of those interesting things. The playoffs, there's a lot of movement in the front part of the playoff seeding for the 49ers, potentially the Cowboys and the Eagles and Vikings. So interesting playoffs, the alignment and who it is. And I'm going to pose this to chat. If you had your choice, because a lot of people have been saying they would rather play, the first seed, the Giants and fall all the way to 3. If you could be in 1 seed, where would you be? Would you rather be seed 1, seed 2, seed 3? I would love to know it because I'm very curious, what people think. So let me know in the chat if you would like, one of those spots, or which spot you would like. I'm curious what everyone thinks. Traffic says, never worry too much about matchups and playoffs. You're gonna have to face good teams no matter what. Give the best seed we can get. I'm all about getting the best seed. I am. I'm all about getting the number 1 if you can. If you have to stay at number 2, do it. It's always the most important thing. And you're right. Things are going to play out. You don't know who you're going to play. But if you could get a cool matchup along the way or a good matchup for you, I think that's a good thing because matchups do matter in the NFL. And sometimes finding the right path is important. And the right path could be as simple as like 2019, being the number 1 seed, playing, Minnesota in the divisional round and then playing Green Bay in the championship. So depending on how things play out, it works. And Mr. Corey says, Paul says, break in Green Bay, his heart again. Just sounds like so much fun. Mr. Corey says, seed 1, everyone comes to Levi's plus a bye. Yeah, I agree. And even with, this is from Traffic, and even with the number 2 seed, there's a real good chance you get home field throughout. It takes just one upset of the number 1 seed. You're right. And last year, both number 1 seeds were upset. So Shajay says, number 1 seed every time. I'm with you. Number 1 seed is always the most enticing. We'll see. I hope it's up for grabs. I hope the Eagles are struggling with the New York Giants and the number 1 seed's up for grabs. I think that would be such an interesting storyline. 49ers from 3-4 all the way to 13-4 and the number 1 seed in the playoffs with a Mr. Irrelevant quarterback, a third string guy stepping up and making plays. I mean, it's a crazy story. Mark Gray says the D-line put pressure like they should. It doesn't matter what seed we are. But I'll take that bye, right? And JLE says always the top seed. And Mark, you're right. I mean, if that defensive line gets after opposing quarterbacks and they put a lot of pressure on opposing teams, then it's tough for anyone. That speeds up the decision making for a quarterback. That makes it easier for your defensive players on the back end to be able to cover. So you're right. It's a lot of it's going to be on defensive line pressure, and we've seen that. When pockets collapse on these quarterbacks and the 49ers get after them, it changes football games. Quarterbacks are taking sacks or turning over the football or making bad decisions, and those things play pivotal roles into what the 49ers like to do on defense and how they can be aggressive. I mean, DeMeco Ryans would love to be able to just bring 4 every single time at the quarterback and be able to get home. Not always the case. I think sometimes it works out, but a lot of times he's been having to bring an extra guy here and there, and that's okay. You know what I mean? But if you can get home with 4, that was the best way to do it. Jay Ellie says rest is always needed with this 18-game season. At least our bye week was much better this year compared to last. Yeah, last year was so early in the season that the 49ers went such a stretch of playing, game after game after game. And I'm sure that probably wore on them a little bit when they got into the playoffs, where this year was more halfway through the season and they were allowed to adjust or allowed to get healthy. Getting another bye would be huge. It really would. So potentially that would be good. And what's up, David V? How's it going? Welcome to chat. David V says, Niners use his member benefits. David V has been a member for a long, long time. Love it. 16 months for David V. And thank you for using your channel um, abilities and channel membership to go ahead and leave a super chat there. Well done, David V. And David V is one of the great ones. One of the great fans. Love David V. So everyone make sure you say what's up to him. Mr. Course says nobody seems to be getting pressure on the D line outside of Bosa. It has been a little bit of a struggle. I think Eric Armstead has, but he's been drawing double teams. Samson Ebukam does, except for when he gets held, which he did in last game. I think that you're right. They could use more pressure from the other players, and I'm sure D'Amico and Chris Kasarik and that unit is going to try to figure out exactly how to do that. That's going to be one of the things they have to do. And Mr. Course says, I'll be cheering for the Giants backups. I will be as well. I'm with you on that. Shajay says D-line getting plenty of pressure, just not against the Raiders as much. Hopefully they straighten that nonsense out. What was interesting is they would get, I think Bosa would get pressure, and they've been getting a lot of hits as well. It's just the sacks that they haven't been able to get, but they do put pressure, on the quarterback pretty consistently with hurries and that sort of thing, and making those guys go outside the pocket. So Shajay is right for sure. Bailey says, yeah, Eagles D-line has 4 D-linemen with 10 sacks apiece. Their D-line is legit. They really are. Against the Eagles, you have to be able to run the football to kind of, offset that, make them think about it, and not be able just to, pin their ears back and come. Because if you are, in a 3rd and long against the Eagles, that's going to be problems. They are built the right way through offensive and defensive line, the same way the 49ers are. And I think the 49ers have advantages in some areas with linebackers and such. And then on offense, they have a lot of skilled players. I think it would be an interesting matchup. I know I'd rather it be at Levi Stadium than in Philadelphia, but we'll see. I think if it comes down to it, I think the 49ers can still get it done. I don't think there's a team in the league the 49ers can't beat if they play their game. Bill says, I'm a little leery about number 1 seed bye. It could be just a chance to break our rhythm. It could, you're right. And we've seen that happen in the past. Last year, in fact, both number 1 seeds lost in the divisional round. The 49ers knocked off the Packers at Lambeau Field, and the Tennessee Titans lost as well. So it can be a little bit of a bugaboo, but we've seen the 49ers be able to handle it before. 2019, Kyle Shanahan's team came off the bye and beat up the Minnesota Vikings in the divisional round. So it can be nice to get players rested, but you're right. It can be a detriment too. It can be a little bit scary. East Coast Red and Gold Podcast. What's up? How's it going? Welcome to chat. Big Papa Paul says, do we know how much time Stidham had to get rid of the ball in the last game average? I don't know. It seemed like it was a lot. I know he did extend some plays. He was willing to get the ball, check it down, but this blueprint that teams have been running against the 49ers the last couple of weeks, with Scott, with the offensive coordinator for the Commanders, they did a really good job of figuring out exactly what to do. And Turner, their offensive coordinator, he max protected, and then he went vertical with routes, and he gave the offense more time to be able to throw the football. And he made the 49ers be willing to bring more than 4, because that's all they want to bring. And occasionally they want to bring Talanoa Fung off the slot or Jimmy Ward. But they don't want to do those things consistently. And with this new style of offense of loading up, max protecting, you have to do that. And then it puts the onus on the secondary to be able to cover, for, 3.5, 4 seconds. And when that happens, it makes it difficult. And you can find players that get away. I mean, Stidham did some things with his legs too. The fact he was able to scramble, for first downs on 3rd down, and then also the play where he rolled out to the left and then was able to throw the ball, back to Devontae Adams. That was a spectacular play. And like Fred Warner said, you got to plaster those guys. They let him get away. And what's up, Kylie? How's it going? Welcome to chat. Always good when you're here. So thanks for coming through. Mr. Corey says, number 1 seed is also more rest for Aaron, Banks, and Deebo. Good point. You get the number 1 seed, right? Deebo gets more rest. Elijah Mitchell gets another week. Kevin Givens gets another week too to get healthy. And then you're preparing for the divisional round. Potentially that gives more time for your backup quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo too, right? Potentially he could get ready and be back. So you're right. 1 more week just means rest. And, and for guys like Trent Williams, the veteran players, having that extra day of rest, Tyshawn Gibson, those guys, it could be very pivotal. But, like Phil was saying earlier, you don't really want to lose that rhythm. So not losing the rhythm is very important for the team and for the 49ers. And so if you can stay, playing at such a high level, go ahead and do it. Play at a high level and get it done. So I don't know for sure, where the 49ers are going to sit in the playoff hunt. I think it's likely that they're number 2. I think that makes the most sense. But I think 1 is still, in there. I don't think they pull back enough. I think if Minnesota wins early in the day, and that's one of the benefits of Minnesota playing at 10 a.m., the 49ers will know what they have to do. It's one of those things where if Minnesota loses and you're guaranteed at least a 2 seed, you could play your starters for the first half of the game. And then if it looks like Philadelphia's running away with the game against the Giants, you can pull off, you can back off and pull your starters out of the game and protect them knowing you're going to play the next week. So I think it's going to be a very fluid situation for Kyle Shanahan, and this 49ers team. But I think a lot of it gets started with that Minnesota game versus Chicago. That's going to start, kicking the dominoes in the right direction of how exactly you let this thing play out. If it goes, one way, you know how to operate it, and it all starts with that. If Minnesota wins, you have to win to keep the number 2 seed. So then it's not even a question. You have to win, and if you can get up big, then you can pull your starters. So Minnesota, if you would mind, go ahead and losing to the Justin Fields less Chicago Bears, that would be great. I'm not expecting it, but yeah, that would be great. And I don't know if anyone got to see the injury report list for today, but once again, we had some guys who didn't practice, including Christian McCaffrey. He continued to not practice. He went out and did some individuals, but didn't go through team drills. And when they asked him, he said he fully expects to play in the game. And then Javon Kinlaw missed practice, which isn't normal, but they said it's due to an illness. So Javon Kinlaw normally practices in full on Thursdays, but he was out because of an illness. And you guys, everyone knows that there is a bad flu that's been going around, and it has been going through the 49ers organization. So that could be why Javon Kinlaw is sick. And then limited in practice. Here's the good news. Kevin Givens was back limited in practice. That's good news because that means he's getting close to coming back, and the 49ers are going to feel pretty comfortable having that defensive, interior with Armstead, Kinlaw, Kevin Givens. T.Y. McGill has played pretty good. That's a nice rotation. And then you got Kerry Hyder as well. So it's very solid. Bosa was back practice today, and also so was Trent Williams. So nothing really to worry about there. When it comes to the Arizona Cardinals, they just have a bunch of guys that are hurt or not practicing. Zach Allen, he's out with a hand. Robbie Anderson with his back. Starting safety Chris Banjo's in concussion protocol. Linebacker Zaven Collins dealing with a calf. James Conner with his knee and shin. Cornerback Antonio Hamilton, hip. Wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins, we know he's out. Jonathan Ledbetter, knee. He's a DN. And Colt McCoy, concussion protocol. Those guys are all, potentially not going to play in this game. We'll see how it ends up playing out. But then they're also dealing with, tackle Kelvin Beachum, and they've had a lot of injuries on the D-line. He's got dealing with a knee and ankle. They don't have a lot to play for, and so they have a lot of guys limited in practice. They have a lot of guys that aren't practicing. Eventually, the 49ers are going to play a little bit of a makeshift Arizona Cardinals team anyways, so it could be it. Mr. Corey's coming with something. Anytime it says, mark my words, he says, Ant, mark my words, DeForest Buckner coming back home in 2023. All his guaranteed money is over with only a $2 million dead cap hit and over $2 million in savings for trading Kinlaw. So you think the 49ers are going to trade? Let me know what you, Mr. Corey. I want to know for sure what you're saying. So you think they're going to trade for DeForest Buckner? I'm curious if they are going to trade for if the Colts are going to trade DeForest Buckner. You think the 49ers are going to trade for him? Interesting. I haven't thought about that at all. I know you've been on the Buckner will come back to the 49ers at some point bandwagon. Just curious exactly if you think it's going to be a trade. That would be pretty interesting. I don't know if the 49ers will be willing to make a trade because if you got Buckner for a 1, you're going to have to think that the asking price is going to be at least a 1. So I don't know. And Donald says, I miss him, and he could have been great with Bosa. There is no doubt that the 49ers wish they could have kept DeForest Buckner. Absolutely, they wanted to keep DeForest. The problem is DeForest Buckner wanted, 20, 22, 23 plus $1 million. And the 49ers, had to make a decision. They could sign DeForest Buckner, let Eric Armstead walk, potentially, lose Jimmy Ward at the same time. And so what they decided to do was go ahead and trade and make an interesting move there. And yeah, I mean, I think they would love Buck. DeForest Buckner's great at pass. I mean, he's pretty good against the run, but he's really great pass rusher. And I think that's where the 49ers miss him. I think they also miss a second, speed edge element opposite of Bosa. When they had Buckner on the inside, it was tough to stop those four guys together. Those four guys could have been one of the toughest groups ever. Two back, and now Dan is saying bring back Buck. It would be interesting. Christopher says, "Hey, faithful, think 49ers will get the number 2 seed, but a slight possibility the 1 seed if the Giants play well. Go Niners." Yeah, Christopher, it all comes down to if the Giants decide to play their starters. I mean, that's one of the question marks that we have. Will the Giants play, their starters versus the Eagles? And I don't know if they are. I mean, I guess they've been sitting everyone at practice, haven't really played, or been practicing their guys. So, I mean, we're gonna see. I don't know what Dabble's gonna do there. Um, I was hoping he would take in like a competitor, like, hey, I'm gonna be a competitor and I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna play all my guys and I'm gonna make sure that this plays out. But I don't know if that's the smartest move. He's one of the C's that's absolutely locked in. And so he doesn't have to win any football games. They don't have to do anything else. They can rest their players and prepare for whoever that is. So, and and this is today, Brian Dabble said no decision yet on playing time for his Eagles. So that's going to be made Friday night. So we're not going to get anything out of Brian Dabble yet on what he's going to do in that football game. I think we can only hope. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play his starters for part of the game and then kind of switch. We'll see. Mr. Corey said he got back to me. Maybe at 4-11, the Colts don't want to pay Buckner $19 million next season, so he's released. Yeah, I think they would want to call around and see what they could get for him. I mean, I'm sure DeForest Buckner would have huge value on the market, and they could probably trade him. So they released him. I mean, he's going to be making a lot of money out there. There's got to be a lot of money out there for Buckner. I think he would price the 49ers out. I don't think they can pay an interior defensive lineman, $19 to $20 million, another one besides what they already have, considering they still have guys to pay, including giving Nick Bosa, $32 million next year. They're going to have to, decide, make some decisions, including maybe Jimmy Ward being gone. There's going to be some tough decisions coming. Paul says Kinlaw, when healthy, is a better run stuffer than Buckner. Against the run, you're right. That's 100% right. Buckner, better against the pass. Kinlaw, better against the run. The thing with Kinlaw, he just has to be healthy. I think that's been one of the biggest question marks. When he's out there, he's an absolute run stuffer. So, 49ers Classic, what's up? 49ers Classic says, going to the Super Bowl is like Mark Sanchez said, you eat elephant one bite at a time. Well played, well said. 49ers Classic. I'm loving it, man. Loving it. So yeah, and Mr. Corey says Armstead is scheduled to make $29 million next season. Whew. Well, that's got to be restructured, doesn't? But I think it's time for a restructuring for Eric Armstead, so that could be done. And what's up, Kenneth? How's it going? This number 2 seed is great. We will mop the floor up with Seattle, Green Bay, or Detroit. I love the confidence. And, I think your first option, you had it, like that with Seattle. I think they'd love to play Seattle. Seattle just seems to be a bad matchup. The 49ers seem to be able to, handle them. So then you got, Detroit. I mean, they got Jared Goff. Goff is familiar with the 49ers. So, I mean, they've been playing some pretty good football. They have a good running game. But do they have enough weapons on the outside? I think they are getting better and more healthy. Their offense is improving, but their defense is still a struggle. And with the 49ers under Brock Purdy, scoring over 30 points a game, I don't know if Detroit could score enough points, to handle the 49ers. I think it would be interesting. It would be, can Detroit, score, and hang with the 49ers? And if they could, that would be interesting. They do have some really good pass rusher. So that would be interesting. 49ers would have to, kind of alleviate some of the pressure. And with Green Bay, it's all about being hot. If you would have told me 4 or 5 weeks ago the 49ers were going to play, the Green Bay Packers in the first round of the playoffs, I'm like, oh, sign me up. But lately they've looked pretty good. Aaron Rodgers has been letting it rip a little bit. Christian Watson scoring touchdowns. Romeo Doubs is kind of coming on. And really what it comes down to is they've been running the football and playing good defense. And those are always recipes for success in the playoffs. You have a hot team like them, that would be interesting, right? You'd have two hot teams, the 49ers, coming off, 10 straight wins potentially against the Green Bay Packers. That could make for one huge matchup in the wild card round. Mr. Corey says, yeah, Armstead is scheduled to make $29 million next season. Woo! A lot. Kenneth says, it will be great tune-up, and Philadelphia going to lose anyway, giving the championship game to San Francisco. That will be interesting, depending on who they play. If the 49ers are playing Green Bay, you'd expect the 49ers to win. Minnesota's playing, the Giants. If Giants beat Minnesota, then they would head to Philly. If Minnesota wins, that would mean the winner of Tampa Bay versus Dallas would head to Philadelphia. Philadelphia's the number 1 seed. So it would either be Dallas. I mean, Dallas has beaten them before. They could potentially do that, or Tampa Bay. I don't know if anyone wants to see Tom Brady and Mike Evans in the playoffs. I know I don't worry about them as a 49er fan, but I think there's some teams that should worry about them. Of course, Detroit has nothing to lose, no pressure. Don't want them. What'll be interesting too is, what happens if, they see Seattle, win. If Seattle wins over the LA Rams, Detroit can't make the playoffs. Will Detroit still go out there and give the same effort to be able to, beat the Green Bay Packers? And in that case, it, might make it a little bit more easy for Green Bay to get to, the playoffs. But I would think that Dan Campbell would use that as a rallying cry to go ahead and end the season on the right note and spoil Aaron Rodgers, and their playoff hopes. And in that case, the 49ers would end up getting Seattle, which would be interesting. A third time that they would play Seattle, the second time at Levi Stadium. The last time they played the Seahawks at Levi Stadium, it didn't go good for Seattle. And Jan says Giants win with their second and third stringers. If the Giants win it with their second and third string, I'll do a jig. I mean, I'll be super stoked about that. That would be interesting. Paul says Green Bay has looked good against who? I think that's that's an honest question. Who have they actually played? And they haven't really played, but you could say that about a lot of teams, right? Like who have these teams been playing, that makes you think that you should worry about them? Well, let's go back. I'll look at their kind of their wins that they've had. So their last loss was against the Eagles. They lost to the Eagles 40-33. So that happened. They were on a 2-game skid. They lost to the Titans. They lost to the Eagles. Since then, on December 4th, they beat the Bears 28-19. They beat the Los Angeles Rams 24-12. On Christmas Day, they beat the Dolphins 26-20. And I believe that without Tua, or was that when Tua got hurt? I think that's when Tua got hurt. And then they beat the Vikings 41-17. So I mean, you're right. It's not the most impressive wins, but they did beat the teams they're supposed to beat, right? So we have to give them credit for that. But I mean, you're right, Paul. It's not an impressive winning streak when you're looking at the overall teams at which they played. And so, I mean, that was a very solid point coming from Paul. Ken that says 49ers are on a mission. Don't matter who we play. It's smashing time. Nothing else will do. I love that mindset. Yeah, exactly. This course says nothing like beating Seattle 3 times in a season after all the years of barely beating them. Yeah, I think that would be, good. And it's a good matchup for the 49ers. We've seen the way Travis Ward's able to play against DK Metcalf. It's all about stopping their run with Kenneth Walker, and the 49ers have proven that they can do that. And then, yeah, Lockett's back, but I mean, how healthy is he with that hand? I think that's going to be a big determining factor in how well the Seattle Seahawks play. But I think it's a good matchup. And I mean, the Seattle defense is not great at stopping the run. The 49ers are really good at running. When you get into the playoffs, you're letting it all hang out. That means you got Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, everyone at your disposal, not to mention Elijah Mitchell. So pretty exciting. Mr. Court says, who is anybody then? Can't play can't play Kansas City, Buffalo, and Cincinnati every week. Oh, you're right. I mean, you can't, right? But I mean, I think if you're looking for like a significant win, if they had to beat the Eagles, you said, "Oh, that's a significant win." I mean, Minnesota, if their defense wasn't so bad, you would think that was a significant win. But I mean, the NFC is not exactly the strongest, strongest conference there has been for sure. I mean, Green Bay, didn't play. They did beat one of the top 3 seeds though in Minnesota. But Minnesota has, their point differential. They're negative 19. It's one of the craziest things ever. So I think you kind of look at it that way where I don't know how many teams, and people say the same things about the 49ers. Well, they haven't played anybody. I think we're gonna find out. You know what I mean? We're gonna find out. And Paul says Tua threw 3 interceptions because he was concussed. It's unfortunate. And I didn't watch that game, but I did hear about it. So you're right. I mean, there's a little bit of a struggle. I mean, like I said, I'm not worried about all three. I think the most likely scenarios for the 49ers to be the 2 seed, even though I did say on the Ant Hill show that my wow that's bold, or maybe I said it on slightly over on Patreon, is my wow that one of my wow that's bold this week is the 49ers end up with the number 1 seed. But we'll see what Dabble and the Giants end up doing, and if they play the Eagles. I think that's what's gonna really, determine what's going on. But guys, I'm gonna jump out of here. Thanks everyone for joining me for this live stream. I'm going to go live again on Saturday for the game preview show. If you guys want to come through, check it out. And of course, ask all the questions. Bring your Wild Ass Bowl predictions. Bring your score predictions. I'm going to go over my key matchups and what the game plan is going to look like for the 49ers. I'm sure we're going to have a lot more answers about who's going to play. But thanks everyone for coming. Stay safe. And remember, the right way is always the 49ers.